Okay, what's the radio show business? Somebody approached me in person at a nice Italian restaurant, at an outdoor cafe, and nobody shot me at a drive-by. What I was like amazed I lived through a cafe dining. Didn't get coronavirus from it, and didn't get shot. Those are two great things I should be happy about. The But anyways, he said he wanted me to produce three sets of videos, 9 videos, 30-minute long roughly, radio type format, but for a visual audience. So I have to remember now when I'm talking that some people don't have visual aids. And when I don't have a script, how challenging is that going to be? How do you describe the magnetosphere to somebody who doesn't have a screen in front of them? But for those who aren't familiar with the channel, we've made over 350 solar flare predictions. All of them came true. All of them. Based solely upon the position of planets and a fictitious planet called Planet X. Planet X I did not name. Don't yell at me. Planet X is the name given to something that appeared to have tilted the solar system, stretched it out to one side. What side? The side that Aquarius is on, the constellation, that side of the sun. And articles and articles and articles have been written about Planet X, research articles, abstracts, from how it's affected the asteroid belt to cosmic wind, but people weren't putting cosmic rays with the Planet X discussion because it was a planet, not a sun, or a failed star, or a collapsed star. So, but we used a model that wasn't our model. It was chief of a naval astronomy. So if he can't figure out what's going on, and they can't figure out what's going on, then I sure as hell won't be able to. He called it Planet X. He put out a paper, said the location of Planet X, I believe. I think he used the word location. Correct me if I'm wrong. One of his articles, you can find it online, by Dr. Robert Harrington, who, unfortunately, is no longer with us. But, so now we're trying to prove that we know where their location is, and there's really no prediction that we have made regarding this phenomenon that hasn't come true. And it amazes me. I'm totally baffled by the fact that I can make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of earthquake and solar flare predictions, and then, from there branching out for other predictions, social and economic, for example, and making predictions based off that, and all those come true. So, coming from somebody with a medical background, this is, you have to have your ducks in line. You got to have your research, and we throw the research right up on the screen, And if you want a link, ask for it. But where Planet X is, whether it's coming or going, is not as important as the fact is what's happening. We can argue all day about the cause, but if we don't at least come to consensus that this is happening, stuff is happening, then we're going to sit here arguing until we're blue in the face, literally, and pronounced dead, most likely. But in front of my audience, my visual audience, I'm running simulations of a magnetosphere simulation that shows the solar wind looking down on the solar system, looking down at the North Pole of Earth with the sun off to the right, and we see balls forming out of nowhere in the tailstream of that solar wind. The magnetosphere on Earth looks like a sideways jellyfish, tentacles going to the left in this simulation. And when real particles with mass, like from time to time, we would see asymmetry in those balls being created, because we have proven, nobody wants to talk about them, but those balls that have just started doing this one day and just shooting them out in the tailstream without any particles coming from the right is a focusing in of electrons. Electrons are focused around by our magnetic poles. The lower powerful ones, the lowest energy electrons, get pulled and wrapped around. Usually low energy electrons do not come from the sun. They can, but the higher energy electrons are the ones coming from the sun. But then when we see the magnetosphere swell up like there's a cannonball, shooting out of Earth and expanding the magnetosphere and rippling it the opposite direction of a crease, then we have two different particle phenomenons happening right before your eyes. And it's happening in all the simulations, so there's no anomaly this and anomaly that. And when we look directly at Earth coming at us, the simulation with the sun again off to the right, but the Earth coming at us, so the wind again traveling right to left, the brown dwarf then would be 90 degrees behind the screen with a slight tilt up about 30 degrees. So it's 90 degrees to Earth and the sun directly behind Earth right now. So if there were particles coming from that direction, we should see holes showing up in the tailstream where we have our densest particles that can respond to changes in both polarization and simple atmospheric particle pressure. And when that happens, folks, it's a lot of jumble of the same. You should see the wind punching holes in the tailstream that's coming right at you. And they should be not balls of yarn appearing with all the line. They should actually have a nice formed eye. Why? Because there's such symmetry to the two winds. They're not at an angle, they're at a right angle. And the right angle for that phenomenon to show up. So then, if you wanted to look at a simulation and say, wow, there's a second wind coming at you, you would look at the windsock that is our magnetosphere, and you would look for wind coming at you. Even the blue lines that are vertical that you see on these, they are vertical lines traveling after the sun's electrons. They sometimes look like somebody went poof and blew a hole right at you. And here we go again. We told you also to expect solar flaring, earthquakes, and solar flaring. Since 3 6-point earthquakes started on the day we said they were going to start, and the solar flares kicked in too, but the images were so delayed in getting posted to the internet. But we have been seeing some solar flares right at the start of, to the day. We told you this is the 19th, and we said on or about the 18th, expect the earthquakes, and then expect the sun to do this. And look what we have, right on time. Right on time. And you leave your entire reputation out on the line when you make predictions. But when they keep coming true, you think you get used to it after hundreds of them? No, it amazes me still every time, because it's a white knuckle period waiting for that clock to tick. And so we showed you some earthquake increases. We'll show you some more, but the solar increases nobody's predicting them because they still are resisting the relationship that exists between tidal forces in an object that doesn't exist and solar flaring. Now, earthquakes. Now, you see Southern California at the bottom, San Diego, but to the right is the Salton Sea. The San Andreas Fault runs right through the middle of the Salton Sea, just for reference. So along the rims of the long elongated valleys, we have all kinds of activity. Been doing that for years, in an increase. It's been an increase and stayed increased. The Ridgecrest has never stopped. That region flanked by two volcanic fields. They subsided, and everything in between collided too. They collapsed. Big snap there on a fracture joint. Hawthorne, Nevada. Same thing as Ridgecrest. We have a massively volcanic region. We've had subsidence in some of these. You can see the circular valleys. And then in between the two subsidence zones, the rest has to give away. And your bridge, your land bridge, kind of collapses. The earthquake global picture, a lot of newer quakes averaging around 5 all over the place. Couple of very far south ones. Due south of Australia is kind of rare. And remember, when South New Zealand rocks, we do get earthquakes in Spain. Figure it out. I don't know. So, but we go to the top of the globe to see what's going on up there, and we do see kind of a slanted pattern to the really, really far north earthquakes. The ones on the border of Canada and United States, one is the Vancouver, where there's 3 plates that intersect, but the quakes along the St. Lawrence and Hudson River, those are along those rivers. They're in a river basin. And remember, all of our basins are always subsiding. And then what happened in Texas? The Texas thing. Freaky. And it is as ugly as it was beautiful. And nobody understands the scope, but it was like another Katrina. And the ice storms are kind of rare, but they're becoming more common because of the glaring differences in temperature that are now existing. And this system was kind of a sneaky system. It wasn't leaving a lot of precipitation in its wake. And it came down through cold country, so cold country is used to cold weather. But as soon as it hit New Mexico, some people knew Texas was in trouble. Texarkana, Arkansas area, even other parts that are adjacent. Here you see a side-by-side of a frozen waterfall. Now, a frozen waterfall in Texas could be considered biblical. But you can see the low pressure, the low temperatures all patterned out on a temperature map. And you can see that I'm showing you now patterns of the corona of the sun. Wait a minute, I'm confusing you. First ice crystals, now I'm showing corona pictures. But a radio audience, they're not confused. But remember those patterns, because a acclaimed physicist, says when you see mosaic patterns in anything, think waves. Now you're looking at the Atlantic Ocean. We'll tie all this in together. The Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean are devoid of even a single cloud. The equatorial belt, ladies and gentlemen, of water in the Atlantic has reformed, and some of it is even traveling in the correct direction. Imagine that. But here comes another blast of cold air. Look at this wave transcending. I zoomed in on this 3 times to get you this image. So if you're on a radio, you're going to have to come in and see this. But it's a giant wave that's annihilating clouds as it passes through and bringing cold air with it. And it's traveling in a different direction than the actual clouds. And when it gets to another region where there's other Harper rays that are kind of like off angle, it leaves a pattern. And whenever you see a pattern, you must think waves. And that's just physics. So what's going on in the United States is bizarre. Leaving the United States over on the right, that's the storm that wreaked all the havoc. You can see a nicely defined eye sometimes, and right behind it, you'll see some voids in the cloud. Some of those are eyes of systems that you don't even know are there. And they have high spin rotation, but they're not visible because of lack of water. But that system leaving the United States is going to be doing this in 3 days. It's going to be flattening out. It's going to reform, flatten out, and then dump water all over Great Britain, Spain, France, Portugal. You'll see. It'll pass right under, and it's right behind. It's right behind. But it'll pick up some more water, and it'll do this. And but oh yes, that Texas storm will be refueling, reforming, become more pronounced. Nice, beautiful spherical storm will appear underneath Greenland. Right next to it is another system, almost mimicking the one that has hurt Texas. And up there you have 3 systems that are all rotating the same direction, 1, 2, 3, back to back to back. The last one is the driest. But, you know, you're going to see that system that's exiting the United States. You're going to see it pummeling Great Britain in about 3 to 4 days. So the whole notion that you have a nice spherical spinning low pressure system automatically defines that there should be water in them, because that's where these are supposed to have been created, over water. And when we look at the ones leaving the United States, you can see a lot of voids, a lot of dark voids in this rotation, and the rotation shows up now better, and it's here where the cold front is, and the driest points. We're seeing the greatest mosaic of interacting waves. Waves of what is the bazillion-dollar question. We're going to zoom in and show you these waves sooner or later. And here I am scrolling back to a different wavelength so you can see what we're looking at. This is the United States. And you can see how dry all of these twirling systems are. The wettest one is now leaving. Say goodbye. Remember that one for a long, long time, will you? And the East Coast didn't like it at all either. But we're going to zoom in to where this void is. I'm clicking on the part of the United States where this dry, bizarre-looking weather is, and you're going to just trip out on this. We're going to go to band 10, and you're going to see racing across the entire frame is a perfectly shaped wave that is not traveling in the same direction as the clouds. It kind of has some of that motion, but this is catching up to the clouds, passing through the clouds, and this line that you see, this beautiful line, is mowing down the clouds and bringing with it much colder air, colder and drier. And if that wave is a pressure wave that's atmospheric pressure created by something else, we should be able to find that something else. And very low frequency radio waves were the first introductory wavelength used in Harper Ray in Alaska. And what they found is you point these things laterally and they create a lot of high pressure. And they can affect the weather. You point them vertically and they can punch a hole in your magnetosphere. Now, so there it is. I mean, there's that incredible wave, and The west coast is off to the left. We're going to take a closer look at what's going on there. But oh my goodness, that wave is very, very prevalent. And then so we pull out further away. We look down on the Alaskan Bay and we see those waves. That wave transcending. We see an overall big picture. That wave is transcending almost the entire frame, extending from the Hudson Bay all the way down to south of Baja. Yeah, and it's all traveling at the same direction, and it's all traveling at the same speed, and it's all overtaking slower moving clouds. That's amazing. And then coming down the system, coming down the coastline, right out Vancouver now and headed towards the border between Canada and Washington, there's another ghost system. And it's got an eye to it, and it's spherical, and it even has a fire hydrant effect at about its 6 o'clock position. So we zoom in a little closer, a little further south, and what do we see? Oh my. Okay, at the top of the screen is that system I just showed you plunging down. You can see the bottom half of that wave also moving through. When you look, though, at center screen, you see like a comet with almost a coma, a bright yellow coma, and a tail extending into the United States, and it's traveling in the wrong direction. It's traveling from right to left. That system is spinning. It's a low pressure system. It's spinning counterclockwise. The backside of that, the 9 o'clock position of that spinning little system, is a halo of dry, warmer air. That's that bright yellow patch, and it's moving. And look what it's done. It looks like something shot a cannonball out of the United States, and the top boundary is so perfectly cut by the spinning buzzsaw of that low pressure system. That is so powerful. It carved the entire southern half of an Arctic vortex in half. It's created a massive fire hydrant effect that starts early, starts at like the 7 o'clock position instead of the 5 o'clock position, and is throwing a massive wall of water over at Mexico. And it's like a comet. It's like a fireball traveling against the whole jet stream and cutting right through it like a buzzsaw. The cut is almost razor smooth, razor sharp. And you want to tell me that's a natural weather phenomenon? I'm going to say, explain the physics. And don't be general. Connect A to B to C, please. And then don't forget to explain those bizarre waves we just showed you pictures of. The mosaic. Now, again, amazing stuff. If you're on a radio show, this is not going to play out. The radio format is just a format, and it's to get a real radio show in the future. But and you got to have a title to something that's identifiable. So the Higher Truth Radio Show is what we're going for. So there you saw a solar flare. Look directly at you, right in the center of the screen. If this was a face looking at you with the eyes, look about where the nose would be on the rabbit, and all of a sudden you see a flash, and then all along that filament you see it light up. Here's a better contrasting image of that event. The reason we find it significant is because basically there wasn't a whole lot of sunspot activity where the explosion occurred. It was more, we were trying to think of it as a hider flare, but we didn't see the whole filament let loose. But we did see the filament, conduct electricity. So the thing that's significant about this is, remember, we told you that brown dwarf is off to the left, almost at 90 degrees to Earth. And so it's going to have its wind focus across the face of the sun. And right now, we're staring at the part of the sun that is experiencing the highest wind from outer space. The sun creates its own wind, but this is coming across the face of the sun. That's why you see such dark features, is because that plasma is neutral helium, and it rolls up and balls up and coagulates along the surface of the sun, sometimes the filaments conforming at the same angle across the entire face, like there's a blow dryer up at the upper left blowing air to the lower right. All the filaments take that shape. Even the coronal hole streams, the edges, take that straight shape, just like there's something blowing the surface plasma in that direction. So then, when you get a lot of instability, you make and break electrical connections, and you touch off a little sparky spark and flashy flash. That's why this portion of the sun looks dark to you, and the coronal holes suddenly show up too. Now remember, we've said repeatedly, coronal holes can be influenced by alignments. They can make the surface plasma split, and when working in conjunction with other forces, can create bigger, more equatorial positioned coronal holes. These are holes in the plasma that don't have a whole lot of sunspot activity nearby in the center of those holes, but there's always sunspot activity, usually to the outside, helping to peel back a section of that plasma. So you peel back the edge of a plasma field and you get a hole. And when you have wind that's coming across the face of the sun that is not the sun's own wind, you can flatten out an edge to a hole and make, for a brief moment, make a hole look like a triangle. But in essence, what we are seeing then is proof that we know there's a brown dwarf in the solar system, that we know where it's at, and now the reason that's so important is because we're trying to get you to understand what it's doing to your planet and to civilization, to mankind, why you see things that are happening now, why the censorship is heavy-handed, why we have a pandemic that's going to get rid of all the sick and the old, is related to the way this planet X has affected Earth, because it's not a planet. And every symptom that any astronomer could predict that would result from a close approach of something like a brown dwarf fragment, which is a fragment of a collapsed star that is spinning extremely fast. What that would create for Earth and the planets, and you can make probably 40 or 50 predictions of what should happen just based upon physics. And we went and looked at every one of those symptoms and then went to the raw data and saw that every single symptom exists, is present, is measurable, is public record until, of course, we show it, and then it doesn't become so public anymore. So if you want to find out what is in store for planet Earth over the next 2 years, I recommend you tune in. I recommend that you share a link or two with your friends who have some education. And I also recommend that you protect yourself from the solar radiation. We went through a solar maximum that was extremely harsh. People really needed protection. They still do, but not like it was. And we're going to go back to those days. They're coming. And in 2022, we're going to be full-fledged X-rays coming off the sun. And in 2023, we're going to look around and see who's left. So stay tuned.